Hello everyone, this is Professor Kristl, and this is the first of the series of videos that you're going to watch during this semester. And I wanted to start by telling you why I think these videos are important for you to see. It seems to me that over the course of my teaching, I've come to realize that there are a lot of things about law school that are probably not obvious to you as a new student. Different ways of teaching, different ways of learning, different sets of expectations. And I thought that it might be helpful to do a series of videos that might help to explain some of what we do. What are the reasons why we do it? What are the ideas driving the particular practices and things that we do in law school? My hope is that if you understand why these things are happening, then you might be better able to see why it is you're doing what you're doing, but also to have the explanation necessary to focus and do the best job that you can in law school. So the purpose of these videos is to help explain for you some of the things we do in law school and hopefully help you to be a better law student, because that's ultimately the goal of everything that we do here at the law school. So what we're going to do in this series of videos are talk about different things. Today we're going to talk about class participation and what goes on in the classroom, but we're also going to cover things like reading cases and outlining and taking exams, issues that are all important for you to do the best you can while you're in law school. And hopefully by seeing these videos, it will give you a better understanding and give you a better edge. All right, so with that, let's start off with what I think is probably becoming a not-so-secret secret about law school anymore. And that is, law school ain't like undergrad, right? I mean, look, the readings are different. You are being expected to read a series of cases, and what you're supposed to get out of the cases isn't exactly clear in the casebook. Usually the readings follow with a series of little numbered paragraphs that talk about other cases and often raise questions without giving you what the answer is. The classroom environment itself is different, right? The professor is not just giving you a lecture. In fact, the professor is trying to engage you, ask you questions, expect answers from you. And you know what? Sometimes the professors don't always give you the answer. And what we're going to find, especially as we go through our class in property, but you'll find in all classes, that the rules you think you're learning, sometimes they aren't the same. We are going to read at a later point in this semester 2 cases back to back on the issue of whether or not a landlord has the duty to try to reduce or mitigate his damages. And those 2 cases come to exactly the opposite conclusion. Well, that can be confusing, right? How does that happen? Why does that happen? So law school is very different from undergraduate education because it's designed to do something different. So the question is, why is it different? Why do we set it up this way? All right? And there's lots of different reasons. But the first reason is that law school, when you're trying to learn what are sometimes called the black letter law or the rules, that's just the first step in the practice of being a lawyer. See, the way the system works is that, sure, we have to learn rules. We have to know what the elements of a copyright claim are, or a bailment, or some of the other things that we're going to cover in property. But let me tell you right now, and you'll probably hear me say this 100 times this semester, no client is ever going to walk into your office when you're an attorney and say, hey, can you tell me what the elements of a copyright claim are? They don't do that. They don't ask those kinds of questions. Instead, they come to you with a set of facts. My Uncle Joe wrote this song, and we're trying to figure out whether or not that song, he has any rights in it, right? And you have to have the ability to hear a set of facts and to be able to analyze those facts and figure out what rule applies, and then be able to apply that rule to the factual situation that your client is presenting you. So the idea that you just come into school and you learn a bunch of black letter law or a set of rules and that's it, that's not going to get you to the place you need to be a good lawyer. Instead, what really needs to happen is you need to learn a new way of thinking. A way of thinking which says, I can learn certain rules, but just as important, I can understand how those rules operate so that when my client presents me with a problem, I can figure out the rule I need to apply and then how to apply that rule to help my client. It's a very different, very active, very engaged process that you have to go to as an attorney. And so part of what the law school classroom is about is starting to get you to learn that new way of thinking. And so the classroom is designed in part to help you develop some skills. Skills like the skill of analysis, the ability to see a set of facts and say, oh, that raises a copyright problem. Oh, that raises a bailment issue. Oh, that's found property. Things we're going to learn in this class. So the ability and the skill to analyze a situation and learn and figure out what is the correct rule of law to apply. Also, once we figure that out, we have to learn skills about how we communicate our conclusions. And we have to learn how to learn the law. Because you can go through law school, you'll spend 3 years, you will learn a lot of law, but you know what? It's going to be one small sliver of all the law that's out there. So you're going to have to learn over these next 3 years how to find new law, how to update and make sure you understand that the principle you think applies, what it currently requires, what are the elements, what are the various pieces that are going to be part and parcel of your analysis. Law school, and the classroom in particular, is designed to help you learn those new skills. And so we're not just feeding you the law, but instead we're designing classes to challenge you, to make you think about the law and make you apply it to particular factual situations so that you start to do what lawyers really do. Learning the black letter law is important. You're going to have to know the rules. But learning how to apply those rules to new factual situations and how to argue that the rule should reach this conclusion which helps my client, that's what law school is teaching you how to do. And so the classroom can't just be dispensing black letter law. Instead, it's got to help you learn how to learn and how to analyze and how to communicate. And so all of law school is designed to help you develop those skills. Some of it happens in the classroom for property or civil procedure or any of your other classes. An important part of developing the skills happens in your legal methods class, where you are going to have to learn how to read cases, research cases, read those cases and find the rule and then figure out whether or not it applies, and if so, why it does or why it doesn't to a particular factual problem. So legal methods and the cases that you are going to be studying and the classes you're going to take on particular areas of law, all that works together to help you learn how to think and analyze to be a good lawyer. All right, so big task, lots of things that have to be happening. Let's focus today on the classroom. And probably one of the biggest things that have occurred to you is that the classroom involves this thing called the Socratic method. And what is the Socratic method? Well, for those of you who took philosophy classes and had the pleasure, and I think it is a pleasure, to read the dialogues of Plato, you will have discovered that Plato talks about this guy named Socrates, who apparently, by all accounts, was sort of a pain-in-the-butt gadfly in ancient Athens, who would go around and have these conversations with members, important members of society. So you might go to a general one day and they might talk about, well, what is love, or what is truth, or these various things. And the way Socrates did it was he would ask a question, get an answer, and then on the basis of that answer, ask another question, and then ask another question. And oftentimes, because Socrates was a pretty smart guy, he could get a person he's talking with to have started out by saying, well, the answer has to be A. And by a series of questions and getting various answers from the person, they end up at the point where the only correct answer is not A. It's something else. It's an amazing thing to read. And the Socratic dialogue that happens in a classroom is designed to engage in that same kind of back and forth. Okay, now, you've only been in law school for a short period of time, so you maybe haven't had the experience, or maybe you're one of the very unlucky people who actually got called on in class and was subjected to the Socratic method. All right? And for those of you who have, and for those of you who are going to go through the experience, you would probably say, the last thing in the world I'm doing as a student being asked questions in the Socratic method is I'm learning anything. Because you know what? I'm standing up here and I'm worried about, am I saying the right stuff? How am I going to look in front of my friends? Is my underwear still going to be clean at the end of this all? You know, you're focused on a lot of other things besides the learning process. But in fact, that questioning of you as the person who's answering, but just as important as those in the classroom listening, in fact, that questioning helps us learn. How? Well, here's what the Socratic method helps us to try to do. First, what it does is it allows us to explore and take apart cases. What was the court saying? What was the rule that was developed by the court? And what were the reasons behind that? So we get to explore the rule itself. And then, just as importantly, we get to test that rule. And usually it's done by asking you hypotheticals. Hypotheticals are basically, well, let's change the facts. What if the plaintiff didn't do this? Would the plaintiff still win? Or would the defendant win? And why? And those kinds of testing of the rule allows us to learn what's important in the rule, what's not important in the rule. Hypotheticals, in effect, are a way for us to understand and learn the rule better by understanding how the rule can work. And by engaging in that exercise of answering those hypothetical questions, you have the opportunity to start thinking about, how does the rule apply in a new or different factual situation? Remember, that's one of the important things you're going to have to learn to do as a lawyer. And it allows us to see how that rule can work and what are some of the arguments we can make. Well, element number 3 isn't present, so therefore a claim can't be established. Those are ways of developing the arguments. And of course, talking about it in class allows us to communicate our analysis, so we're learning those skills. Okay? So in effect, what the Socratic method helps us to do is it helps us to develop those thinking and analytical skills that you need to learn to be a good lawyer. And that's the purpose behind the Socratic method approach towards class. So, it may seem scary when you do it, but trust me, it's a way of forcing you to think, and as a member of the class, you think along with the person answering the questions. And that helps us to develop those skills we need to be successful lawyers in practice.